Thank you all for attending. This is going to be a little higher level than the last presentation. We're going to talk about what is a really interesting and somewhat politicized. This is who I am. Our firm does a lot of wireless work, different bands. We represent a lot of companies that are wireless entities that are not carriers, that use spectrum principally for internal operations. So V2V is similar in that it is licensed, it is mobile only at this point in time, and it covers, it's an emerging technology that is running into trouble with respect to the Commission's, the FCC's views on how spectrum should be utilized. On the other hand, the automotive industry globally and domestically are very much behind it. We'll get into those challenges and issues as we go through here. These are the topics I'm going to talk about, but I want to do, before we delve into it and I show you a short video, is to kind of distinguish between, you've heard of autonomous vehicles, we've heard of infotainment systems for cars. It's very important to conceptually separate those. V2V is a technology that's been developed. Let's talk about what's in the cars today. First, you have the infotainment systems that are growing up and becoming more sophisticated. Largely wireless carrier-based communications. The emergency response system that's been in existence for a long time, that's now sold principally through GM, and I forget the name of that. You then have all the engine monitoring systems, the computers on board that manage the electronics in the engine today. The latest thing that you see now with respect to technology that's actually on the road and installed in vehicles are what they call vehicle resident accident avoidance systems. These are all the sensors that are being put in that feed back the immediate environment surrounding the car. They're sensors, they're put in the bumpers, they're put on your side mirrors, you have the rear view camera. Those are called vehicle resident devices. Those are different from V2V, which we'll get into. The interesting thing about the V2I, it's a new technology in terms of deployment, but it's very expensive today for the insurance carriers. There was an article earlier in the Wall Street Journal in April that talked about this issue. When there's a crash, which would have been a mechanic, like your side reviewer gets knocked off, someone goes by, that's a $300 to $400 repair. But with the software that has to be recalibrated, you're up over $1,000 for something like that. So there's a trade-off, and that's not going to go away for a long time. Again, those systems, think of those as vehicle resident. There's nothing, it's just the surrounding environment. The two emerging technologies are V2V, which we're going to talk about in greater detail today, and the other is autonomous driving. That's, those are the tests, the development that's going on. Uber, all sorts of people in Silicon Valley are developing those, the autonomous driving technologies. You look at the test things, you see all these GoPros on top of it. There's a lot of analytics, but the thing is, the RF technology that is used with that is very localized. It only sees so far. The radar, et cetera, you might have 50 feet on those. So that's a challenge with autonomous vehicles. And we're going to talk now about V2V. The other, we'll get into that. The other big technology is V2I. That's vehicle to infrastructure. Sometimes it's referred to as V2X. But V2I is taking that, is a layering, if you would, a physical distribution is a better way to look at it, of V2V technology. It has to do with the management of the roads and other infrastructure. So it's a gradation, if you would. It's the next generation of intelligent traffic control systems. You have at the top, at the bottom of the heap is traffic control, the lighting we've had for years. The other are some of the things that you see on the highways, the signs that give you an estimate, 50 miles, 50 minutes to get 50 miles to the George Washington Bridge. Those are intelligent traffic systems. You see some of it on toll booths, etc. That's very basic. That's not V2I. V2I takes the same technology that we're going to talk about for V2V and installs it on the roadsides and communicates with the vehicles. And that is much further down the road as compared to V2I, as compared to V2V. V2V is a crash avoidance technology. It's the really interesting thing. It has a reach. It's a dedicated short-range communications, and what it is, it's a 802.11p technology, and it has a distance of up to 300 meters. This is the absolute basic of this, but that's its value. It's a dedicated band of spectrum that communicates. The interesting thing in what it communicates is the basic safety message. It's updated and broadcast up to 10 times per second. So it's constantly going. And the way to visualize it is, imagine the trucks, not out here, but there's a constant circle. It's transmitting constantly and processing the algorithms to understand the traffic environment within 300 meters of the vehicle. And they're talking back and forth to each other. It's very effective. It's been tested, piloted. There was a very big 2014 pilot test in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And this validated the technology and convinced the auto industry domestically and globally that it's an effective traffic avoidance system. And it allows people, because the distance it goes, you can see beyond the technology and the computer that talks to the vehicle, can see beyond trucks and buses up ahead and determine, is somebody stopping, turning, etc., that's going to cause the vehicles in front of them immediately in between the two to stop. It allows the onboard vehicle to give a message to the driver. The interesting thing about V2V at this point in time, it's simply a warning. There will be different type of alerts that will be communicated to the driver in such a situation where the traffic flow is going to change on them and the driver needs to react. It's installed principally as an original equipment. And again, DOT and NHTSA, which drives V2V, and the Federal Highway Administration, which drives V2I, they see it as complementary to vehicle resident systems and to autonomous vehicle technology. That's the big point. The other thing to keep in mind that the video did a very nice job of presenting was that the messaging to the car, it's a warning to the driver. They don't automatically stop the car, make it turn, and do anything. It's a warning in a direction.
Imagine a future where vehicles are able to communicate with each other. Vehicle-to-vehicle or V2V technology would provide drivers functional information when they need it and provide them with a warning of a potential crash. V2V provides drivers with 360-degree awareness of similarly locked vehicles within a range of approximately 300 meters or 984 feet. This secure system keeps personal information anonymous and does not track your vehicle. Drivers will receive warnings that inform them of potential hazards through a visual display, seat vibration, or tone. These are only warnings. The driver remains in control of the vehicle
This is very basic, but it's very good.
When DSRCs combine with GPS technology, the result is a low-cost V2V communication system that provides a 360-degree view of similarly equipped vehicles within communication range. Transmitted messages common to all vehicles include current GPS position, vehicle speed, acceleration, and heading, vehicle control information such as the transmission state, brake status, and steering wheel angle, as well as the vehicle's path history and path prediction. V2V does not include current advanced technologies such as navigation, internet access, assisted services, rear view cameras, and other advanced technologies. Now is your turn. Are you ready for V2V technology in your next vehicle?
So we've,
Thanks, guys.
I hope that helped visualize what's going on. The circles, it's constant communications. That's the interesting thing. You know, it's 10 times per second. All of that data is being transmitted. The other vehicles are picking it up, running it through their algorithms. It's all resident in the vehicles. So it's a sophisticated computer system. Let's keep going. We talked about those in the video. The left turn, the intersection movement, that's very useful. I don't know what good it would do in the traffic in New York City because it's so slow and dense. It's not going to help alleviate that. But when traffic is moving at a normal speed in the rest of the world, it has a lot of value. The left turn assist, when you're making that left-hand turn and you can't see for sure if something's approaching, that's that application. Emergency brake light, that's when you're looking beyond the vehicle in front of you and it tells you the vehicle in front of the bus is stopping. You're going to know the system is going to tell you to slow down. The forward collision warning, don't rear end the guy, you're getting too close. The blind spot warning, lane pass warning, those two are evident. The other thing is, they've built in security from the beginning. They had to deal with that up front. The auto manufacturers and the DOT said this had to be in there. The interesting thing about the cybersecurity guidance is that they wanted to separate the infotainment and other systems from V2V that exist in the vehicles today. They want to make sure there's no overlap. V2I. These are the integration of the roadside units. This is where, as I said, this is next-gen ITS. Separate backhauls, distinct from existing traffic control systems. This is where infrastructure comes in. The interesting thing is that V2I is voluntary at this time, and it's behind, in terms of deployment, V2I. They don't see this ever being imposed at this point in time on municipalities. But if it does take off, this is where the back-end analytics will come in, will grow and evolve, because it's not going to be from the vehicles. It's all real-time information that's not stored in the cars. You'll still have the black box in the cars, but V2I is the way that cities will be able to use the data and really try to manage traffic flows if it evolves. There was a test in New York City 5 or 6 years ago that validated the concept of V2I in the city. How that gets rolled out is a different story. The wireless policy issues, this is where the rubber meets the road, if you would, for V2V. It was designated, they gave them the last 75 megahertz there at the end of that band. They adopted licensing rules for both the roadside and the vehicles. They're not, the roadside is just a very routine licensing process, and the licensing for the vehicles is licensing by rule. Every car is not going to have to go get a license. But what happened is, in the last 10 years, Wi-Fi demand has exploded. And so the FCC is getting pressure from the carriers, from the technology companies, and say, hey, that's way too much spectrum to dedicate to that use even though it's safety. We want you to come up with ideas to share that spectrum. So the FCC and its, ever vigilant approach to trying to make life complicated for specialized applications, they've directed the industry to conduct a series of tests. They've made commitments. DOT, NHTSA, and the FCC told Congress we're going to develop all these tests. The tests are ongoing, but the technology rates, because DSRC technology has such high latent, not high, but requires very, very low latency, if you would. They have, the error rate with these other technologies, detect and avoid, are actually interrupting the communications. Does not seem viable for Wi-Fi applications to coexist in the same band. What may happen is that they may divide that band. That's a possibility. People today were talking about IoT and M2M. It's very different. Many of the IoT and the M2M applications, very low data rate. You can just compare and contrast the two. Because of the remotes, there's so little technology and there's so little power that's going to be in the remotes in the IoT environment. They're going to be put in vehicles, in buildings, and have a 10-year life because they're going to be everywhere. We were talking today in the conferences, in the earlier conferences. There are going to be hundreds of thousands of these deployed in systems throughout the country, from heating and air conditioning to security to all kinds of business applications, medical, et cetera. You can't take those out and replace them. So the IoT is kind of like the opposite of V2V. I went through all that. The other is, the IoT today is basically a mobile to base communication, just as we have that with the cell network today. V2V is real-time mobile to mobile. So it's very, very different. They just grew up differently is the best way to think about it. V2V and V2I is a very specialized application. But neither of them, the commonality is mobile broadband that we have for the smartphone is not the technology, the wireless technology that works. So where are we today? NHTSA finally came out after years of testing, et cetera, in December. Here's the proposal. The proposal is for cars and trucks only, light trucks. Rail, heavy trucks, buses are going to come later. It's going to be effective 2 years after adoption and with a 3-year phase-in. So assuming it was finalized, and that's a big assumption, later this year, let's say September 1, it'd be 2 years, 5 years from September 1, 2022, every new vehicle coming off the assembly line sold in America would be equipped with this. The benefits, again, this is crash avoidance, are all those benefits. The annual aggregate cost, the one thing I will say about DOT and NHTSA, they're very good at doing cost-benefit analysis for safety devices. And this is the aggregated cost of building, the annual cost at full production, if you would, 15 million cars a year, of a $3.84 chip and chipset that will be the V2V technology embedded in the car. They ran the calculations, and this is what it would cost. The challenge is the auto industry wants it. They're very much in favor of the standards. The Wi-Fi and the technology industry are opposed to it. They feel they have technologies that can work and do the same thing, be it wireless or other, even mobile to mobile, and the wireless industry is saying in the future we'll be able to do it with our infrastructure. it can be the traditional way of doing things. But the challenge for the auto industry is that Trump has instituted this executive order that for every one regulation we adopt, we have to get rid of two. And you do the cost-benefit analysis, it's very likely that there's a strong possibility that the mandate, the rule requirement, may not be imposed for some time. So that's the challenge and the uncertainty at this time. And then the related question is, will the auto industry implement it on a voluntary basis if DOT and the government balks? The funny thing here is the people who filed in opposition to this at NHTSA were CTIA, NCTA, the cable industry, because they want it for Wi-Fi. CTI says this doesn't work. Qualcomm and Cisco had mixed messages for both. So it's an interesting dynamic that's come up. Again, I think, just to give you another illustration of how the change in administration can change the outlook on a technology. That's it. The pros and cons for infrastructure. V2V is pretty neutral for infrastructure. It will drive the pros. If V2I will work, could drive a lot more municipal fiber infrastructure. Because the idea is that V2I, those messages, all those communications, that data, should come back through a separate pipe, at least how the Federal Highway Administration views it, from the existing intelligent transportation systems that exist today. So that's the big kind of comparison with respect to this group. V2V is not going to be something that's going to hit real soon, but V2I, potentially, if it takes off, could have a big impact on additional infrastructure. And with that, any questions? Okay, thank you for your time.